அனைவரும் ஒரு இசை நிகழ்ச்சி நடன நிகழ்ச்சி நடைபெற்றதை பார்த்து ரசிச்சிருப்பீங்கன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். அடுத்த நிகழ்ச்சி வட அமெரிக்க தமிழ்ச்சங்க பேரவை பெருமையுடன் வழங்கும் ஒரு சிறப்பு நிகழ்ச்சி. அந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில் பங்கேற்க தலைவர் டாக்டர் முத்துவேல் செல்லையா, பேராசிரியர் அடேல் பாக்கர், பேராசிரியர் பாய், டாக்டர் எலிக் ஷேண்டர் அவர்களை மேடைக்கு அழைக்கிறேன். இந்த பேரவை வழங்கும் இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில் அடுத்த தகுதியில் நமது சிறப்பு விருந்தினர்களான பேராசிரியர் அடேல் பாக்கர், பேராசிரியர் பிரான்சிஸ் பாயில் மற்றும் மருத்துவர் எலிக் ஷேண்டர் அவர்கள் நமக்கு மிகவும் பயனுடைய பல செய்திகளை தர உள்ளார்கள். மிக அருமையான ஒரு முக்கியமான ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு நாம் வந்திருக்கிறோம். தயவு செய்து எல்லாரும் அமர்ந்து சத்தம் இல்லாமல் இந்த மிக முக்கியமான நிகழ்ச்சியை கேட்கும்படி எனது அன்பு வேண்டுகோள் நினைக்கிறேன். இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியை உங்களுக்கு நடத்தி கொடுக்க இருப்பவர் நமது தலைவர் முனைவர் முத்துவேல் செல்லையா அவர்கள்.
நன்றி திரு தில்லைக்குமார் அவர்களே. I was here earlier this morning and I'm here before you again. For the benefit of the audience, for the special guests, I'm going to, as I said in the morning, toggle back and forth between English and Tamil so they can at least partially understand. The purpose of this meeting, and I attribute that as a special FeTNA meeting, this particular segment, is to emphasize the following. As you all know, FeTNA has been around for 23 years and we have never wavered from our support for the Elam Tamils, and I am proud to say that. I mentioned this in the morning, but many of you are not here, so let me say that again. There is no politics here. There is nothing to be afraid. Anything and everything we do is operated under the United States law. In the past conventions, we have been bringing scholars and passionate people from Tamil Nadu who try to explain to you why we do these kinds of things. But last year, when I discovered Ellen Shander, I invited her and had her give a talk. And she rocked the house, and you know that. It's in Atlanta. So this year, I'm trying a different formula. And I am inviting all three, and I will duly introduce them. And I have been trying to get at least the other two for quite some time now. And why do we do this? The idea is that sometimes there are two kinds of people, as I say. There are some people, about 20-30% of the people who watch and read the news every day about Elam, what's happening to our brothers and sisters. And it breaks their heart if anything bad happens, and they go up and down with the kind of news over there, good or bad. But then the rest of the people, they don't even know that what's really going on there. And they don't care. Or maybe they do not mind. So when we come every year here and try to say what's happening there in Elam, when my brothers and sisters are having such a miserable time, when we try to tell it through our Tamil orators, maybe you think that, well, now what do these people know? Now what do they care? So here I am inviting three distinguished gentlemen who in their profession have got nothing to do with caring for Elam Tamils or anything. But they do it out of passion. They do it because they have this helping heart. They do it because it's right. So I want you to listen from them. as to why and how each person has their own expertise, their own background, and their own reasons for being involved in this. Slide can come up, please. And he'll be talking for about 20 minutes. And then I'm going to introduce Professor Edel Barker, and she's going to talk for about 20 minutes. And then my sister, Ellen Shander, comes, and she's going to make a very short speech. I told her 5, she said 6. I said, okay, 6. But then something in between has creeped. The state's Attorney General, Richard Blumenthal, I was told he's going to be here in a minute. At 5:30 or so, we are very close to reaching that time. And I was also told that he won't be here for long. So this is a logistics issue for me. And if he is willing to stay a little bit longer, then I'm going to have this program complete and have him come at the end and then say a few words about this convention, and possibly request him to give our plaques of appreciation to this gentleman from himself. But if he has to go, and then we may have to kind of a pause in the program between the speakers, and then have him come, say a few words. I hope you do not mind. I already told them, they understand. I said that. I am so delighted to introduce Professor Boyle. He's, as you can see, in case if you are visually impaired or cannot see, I cannot see myself, so I'm going to read it for you. Professor Boyle is a professor of international law at the University of Illinois College of Law. He's a scholar in the areas of international law and human rights, and he received a JD degree, magna cum laude, and AM PhD degrees. I don't even understand. Maybe this is something related to law, I understand. He's going to explain that. So I'm a scientist, so. And PhD degrees in political science from Harvard University, one of the distinguished universities in the country. As an international expert, recognized international expert, Professor Boyle serves as a counsel to Bosnia and Herzegovina and to the provincial government of the state of Palestine. From 1991 to 1992, Professor Boyle served as a legal advisor to the Palestinian delegation to the Middle East peace negotiations. He has also served on the board of directors of Amnesty International. He is author of a book, The Tamil Genocide of Sri Lanka. It is right there. Please contact FeTNA as to how you can get copies of the book, or you can write an email to Professor Boyle himself. All you need to do is go Google his name. Google Professor Boyle in Tamil. You will listen to, you will hear everything. Professor Boyle has also traveled all over the world, including India, and delivered speeches on Tamil genocide and war crimes committed by the Sri Lankan army against innocent Tamil civilians. So without further ado, I'm going to request Professor Boyle to come and give his presentation. I want you to please stay quiet as much as possible, keeping the children to your lap, and then listen to the argument, his argument.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today with all of you. I had asked the organizers to distribute one handout, which I hope you do have. If you do not, I'll go through part of it. And that is the Article 1 of the 1973 Convention Against Apartheid. Because what we see and have always seen in Sri Lanka is an apartheid criminal regime by the government of Sri Lanka against the Tamils of Sri Lanka. Now, in my book, I've outlined the case for genocide, and I'm not going to repeat that here. You can get it in my book. But what I want to deal with here
is an additional treaty. It's very important, and that is the Convention Against Apartheid. Sri Lanka is a party to the Convention Against Apartheid, so I am only holding them here to their own convention. And I note that there are 7 states parties to the Apartheid Convention, including India. So this is binding law on both Sri Lanka and India and 107 other states. Why is this important? Because, as Ellen pointed out earlier today in our U.S. TPAC lectures, you have to establish a divestment, disinvestment campaign internationally, worldwide, against the government of Sri Lanka along the same lines and for the same reasons that the world did against the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa by the whites against the blacks. The legal principles are identical. The convention is identical. If it worked once, it will work again. But it is up to you to carry this out. Now, if you have a look at Article 1 of the Apartheid Convention, it defines apartheid as a crime against humanity. What is a crime against humanity? That goes back to the Nuremberg Charter for the prosecution of the Nazi criminals by the United States government and the other victorious powers in World War II. And the concept of crime against humanity was put in there specifically to deal with the Nazi persecution and extermination of the Jews. That is a paradigmatic example, though not limited to, a crime against humanity. And this convention, to which Sri Lanka is a party, and it has already agreed then that apartheid is a crime against humanity, legally analogous to what Hitler and the Nazis did to the Jews. I'm not saying the same numbers, of course, but legally analogous, legally the same phenomenon. And exactly what the white racist Afrikaner regime in South Africa did to the blacks, as well as the Indians in South Africa, many of whom were and still are Tamils. Article 1, paragraph 2 of the Apartheid Convention says quite clearly, the states parties to the present convention declare criminal those organizations, institutions, and individuals committing the crime of apartheid. What does that mean? The Rajapaksas are all criminals. The army, Fonseca, and the rest of them are all criminals. Those Buddhist monasteries and monks and other so-called religious officials in Sri Lanka who have advocated apartheid against the Tamils are criminals as well. It's all there. Just read the handout, which I hope the organizers will have for you. Article 2 of the Apartheid Convention defines the crime of apartheid. And it says, shall include similar policies and practices of racial discrimination, segregation, and discrimination as practiced in Southern Africa. That's exactly what the Tamils have been up against from day one in Ceylon and now Sri Lanka. And I won't go through all of the very extensive indicia, the elements of apartheid here. You can find them in the handout. If you read it, you will see that the government of Sri Lanka has inflicted each and every element of the crime of apartheid, except perhaps the formal prohibition of intermarriage. Other than that, all these elements have been violated. Now, I don't have here time to go through all the legal implications of what the application of this convention means to the government of Sri Lanka, the Fonsecas, the Rajapaksas, the Buddhist monasteries and monks, and all the political parties as well. They're all criminal. But this handout is taken from my book, Defending Civil Resistance Under International Law. You can get it on Amazon.com for $10. And I have 100 pages in there dealing with all of the principles of international law, international criminal law, and human rights applicable to the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa. These principles of law and human rights all apply fully to the criminal apartheid regime in Sri Lanka. And it is up to you to organize a divestment, disinvestment, boycott, sanctions campaign against the government of Sri Lanka, similar to the divestment, disinvestment campaign that was launched against the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa, here in the United States, by courageous African Americans with the support of those of us who are white Americans, myself being Irish American. Now, it's clear that this crime of apartheid is a peremptory norm of international criminal law. It binds all states of the world, even if they are not parties to the Apartheid Convention. Indeed, you can read also the statute for the International Criminal Court, now established in The Hague. And clearly, if you look at that statute, it says apartheid is a crime against humanity. Again, that's exactly what Sri Lanka is doing to the Tamils today as we speak. And there are 111 states parties to the Rome Statute for the International Criminal Court. So, obviously, there is some degree of overlap between these two treaties. But well over half the countries in the world formally recognize apartheid as an international crime. And in addition, many of these states have adopted domestic implementing legislation making apartheid a domestic crime as well. So it is up to you, again, to go out and apply this crime of apartheid to the leaders, to the president, the defense minister, the other ministers, the Buddhist monks, the monasteries, the military officials, to the government of Sri Lanka, and to the country itself. Divestment, disinvestment require companies to sell off stock with respect to Sri Lanka. That's divestment. An American company should sell off any stock with respect to any investment in Sri Lanka. Likewise, disinvestment. Companies must pull out of Sri Lanka, here in the United States, elsewhere around the world. They must not participate in an international criminal regime. The exact same position the world took toward apartheid South Africa. It worked before, it will work again. Indeed, the government, the economy in Sri Lanka is far more vulnerable than South Africa. Textiles, tourism, tea. They're trying to do some high-tech work. That's about it. With a successful divestment, disinvestment, boycott campaign, you can bring Sri Lanka to its knees. Exactly the way the world brought the far more powerful criminal apartheid regime in South Africa to its knees, culminating in the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act of 1986, here in the United States of America, that was passed by Congress over President Reagan's veto. We did it with a grassroots movement here in the United States and around the world, and you must do the same. This is not a case of reinventing the wheel. It happened before, it can be done again. You must go out in your own neighborhoods and communities, wherever you're from, and research in your local newspapers what was done for divestment, disinvestment, boycott, sanctions against the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa, and then you must do the exact same thing. It is also in the Apartheid Convention that there is an overlap between criminal acts of apartheid and criminal acts of genocide within the meaning of the 1948 Genocide Convention. Quote, observing that in the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, certain acts, which may also be qualified as acts of apartheid, constitute a crime under international law. Again, my book thoroughly outlines the case for genocide by the government of Sri Lanka against the Tamils. And it was my great honor and privilege to be the first lawyer ever to file a substantive genocide case at the International Court of Justice. And that was as the lawyer and ambassador for the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina against the genocidal rump Yugoslavia. I won 2 world court orders by the World Court against the rump Yugoslavia to cease and desist from committing all acts of genocide against the Bosnians. Those two orders brought the Genocide Convention to life today as we speak now, despite the fact that it had been first drafted in 1948. And if you read the final judgment of the World Court in the Bosnia genocide case, you will see that the court ruled that the massacre of 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys at Srebrenica constituted genocide. Well, the government of Sri Lanka massacred 50,000 Tamils on the Vani Beach between January and June a year ago. And certainly that was genocide as well. Thus, yet another reason why you must set up and establish a divestment, disinvestment, boycott, sanctions regime and campaign against the government of Sri Lanka exactly along the lines of what was done to the criminal apartheid regime in South Africa. So the road here is quite clear. The legal principles are very clear. You can read them in my two books. In my other book, Defending Civil Resistance Under International Law, as I said, you have 100 pages of legal analysis of the illegality and criminality of the Afrikaner apartheid regime. All you have to do with that book is change the name from South Africa to Sri Lanka. Change the name blacks to Tamils. And the conclusions are all the same. So this task is up to you. It will take time. The apartheid regime, the struggle there, took almost 15 years. I was a part of it going back to my days as a student at Harvard Law School. Even longer. And you're going to have to start doing it now. But at the end of the day, you will succeed in dismantling the criminal apartheid regime in Sri Lanka and bringing forth Tamil Eelam. Thank you.